Good afternoon. It's bouncing on and off on its own. Okay, let's try this again. And the home of many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples is part of the intricate nationhood that reaches across Turtle Island. At this time of truth and reconciliation, we welcome the opportunity to work together towards new understandings and new relationships and ask for guidance in all that we do. To my knowledge, there are no disclosures of pecuniary interests in any of the files in front of us. Adoption of the minutes. The motion before us is that the recommendation that the Committee of Adjustment Consent adopts the minutes of April 19th, 2023. Do I need a mover? All right, moved and seconded. All in favor? Moved, passed. Now I'll move over to our planning staff and ask them to tell us something about application 1, B1323 at 315 Sunnydale Road South. It's part of the consent agenda.
So application B23 315 Sunnydale Road South. The application proposes to create one new lot for a total of 2 lots. The portion of the property proposed to be severed, as shown on the severance sketch provided as part 2, has a frontage of approximately 30.5 meters along Knox Road East, a depth of approximately 24.38 meters, and an area of approximately 743 square meters. The portion of the property proposed to be retained, as shown on the severance sketch provided as part 1, has a frontage of approximately 36.62 meters along Sunnydale Road South, a depth of approximately 30.59 meters, and an area of approximately 1,117 square meters. So comments received. Public Works does not oppose the applicant's request and has provided the following comments. Municipal water and sanitary services are installed to the existing house. Public Works notes that severed parcel part 2 does not have water or sewer services available. New services will be required to be installed from Knox Road East by a town-approved contractor. Any future development on the subject lots will be required to adhere with the current Town of Wasaga Beach engineering standards and policies, specifically the infill lot grading and drainage policy. Servicing for this property was substantially performed on August 13th, 2014. There's a $25,000 road cut penalty, which will be applied under bylaw 2013-61 unless the new services were installed after 10 years have elapsed. The new driveway will be located off of Knox Road East, a minimum 9 meters from the intersecting street lines. The property is not regulated by the MVCA, and Wasaga Distribution note no objection, as there's currently only one electrical service. The applicant must contact WDI for the requirements of providing a new service to the lot line. It appears that we've also received a written submission from a member of the public. I'm not sure if you want that read out now.
If we have no further comments from staff or any of the associated departments, it would seem reasonable to have that now. Thank you.
So we have received a comment from Jackie Walker, which notes Thank you for the written notice regarding the above file concerning the proposed severance of the property located next door to my home at 14 Knox Road East. I purchased my property at 14 Knox Road East 20 years ago, and I have been extremely happy living on the glorious street in Wasaga Beach. I spent a considerable amount of time searching for a home that would offer me the privacy, green space, and streetscape that Knox Road East provides. If you're not familiar with this beautiful street, I would encourage the committee members to see it firsthand. I have some concerns with the proposed severance of the property next door, which are as follows. 1, the homes on the north side of Knox Road East between Sunnydale Road and Rapid Street all feature large lots with mature trees and beautiful green space, spaced well away from the road with considerable space between the homes. Spaciousness and privacy are a huge draw to the street for existing homeowners and potential buyers. There are only 5 homes on the north side of Knox Road East between Sunnydale Road and Rapid Street. Like my home, all of the neighboring homes on the north side are set back over 50 feet from the road. The proposed severance at the drawing seems to indicate and suggest the potential for a new home to be built much closer to the road than the current streetscape, as well as very little side yard on the east side abutting my property. Essentially, it appears that a severance could permit the addition of a new home that would sit about halfway up my driveway with very little side yard on the east side of my property line. This would not be in keeping with the current character and streetscape of Knox Road East and could potentially negatively affect the property values of our long-standing homes. 2, while I believe that a survey was completed, there is no marker on the southeast side of the property that I can observe to show what the surveyed property line is. There are currently a line of mature trees between my home and the applicant that provides the screening, shading, greenery, and privacy that I cherish and invested in. With no marker in place that I can observe, I am unsure about where the proposed new survey property line is and whether any of these trees would be removed in the future should a severance/future development be permitted. 3, currently our lots are separated by a rather steep hillside on the east side of the property on Knox Road East where my home is situated. I am very concerned that a severance would permit the construction of a new dwelling or dwellings on the neighboring side would cause erosion of this hillside and potential drainage issues affecting my older home. While I can certainly appreciate the desire of a current homeowner to increase the value of their home and lot for resale by being able to list their existing property as 2 lots, I strongly believe that this should not be permitted to the detriment of the neighboring property as well as other neighboring properties. I am hopeful that the committee's consideration of this request will include the due diligence required to ensure that this requested severance and potential future impacts are compatible and respectful of the established physical character of the street, ensuring that it does not have the potential to be out of scale and break the pattern/continuity of the beautiful, well-established street of Knox Road East, Wasaga Beach. So those are all the comments received. I believe I just have to read out the recommendation. So in consideration of the foregoing, based on the above, the Planning Department supports application B1323, subject to the following conditions being applied. 1, that 5% parkland contribution as required by the Planning Act be paid as a requirement of the approval of the severance, the parcel severed. The determination of the parkland contribution will be based upon an appraisal prepared by an individual who is a member of the Appraisal Institute of Canada. 2, that the applicant provides a registered reference plan, said reference plan to show all of the parcel to be severed and all of the parcel to be retained. 3, that a new set of municipal water and sanitary sewer services be installed for the unserviced severed lot part 2 in accordance with town standards and policies, and that a $25,000 road cut penalty be applied under bylaw 2013-61 if the new services are installed before August 13th, 2024 to the satisfaction of the Public Works Department, that an overall lot grading plan for the subject property be submitted to the Public Works Department for review and approval. 5, that the applicant provide a draft legal description of the severed lands to be included in the certificate of official. 6, that the applicant apply for and obtain any necessary permits for the demolition of the existing frame garage located on the proposed severed lands part 2, and that they be removed, and that the applicant provide confirmation of their demolition. 7, that the applicant provide a 4x4 daylight triangle to the town of Wasaga Beach at the corner of Knox Road East and Sunnydale Road. 8, that all conditions of this decision be fulfilled and the documents presented to the planning department for issuance of the certificate of consent within a period not to exceed 24 months from the date of decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any members of the audience, either here or online, that would like to make further comments about this before the committee does its final consideration? Anyone?
Sorry, I just had a question. The statement that
Excuse me,
was,
for the records, could you please give us your name and address, please?
oh yes, sorry, Jacqueline McClatchy, 14 Knox Road East. I live next door and submitted the letter
Thank you.
that you just heard. Yeah. I'm not familiar with the proceedings here, but what was just read is the recommendation from the planning department that it be approved. I mean, there are some parts in my letter that I'm not sure if that's your decision to decide as far as the side lot and, you know, a lot of different things that would be, it appears would be part of this new dwelling that does appear to be outside of what's, I'm thinking currently in zoning or for that street in particular. So I'm just not sure what the next step is here. Is it now a vote to you or?
So let me explain the process for you at this point. As with all of these cases, we make sure the application is read out. We go through the comments, both from our staff and various departments and agencies that may have an interest in the particular property. We then do the comments from the public. We open it to comments here on the floor. We then have a recommendation from our planning staff, and they always attach a series of conditions. Some of them are fairly standard. Sometimes they may be specific. And I guess in every case, there'll be some that are specific because every piece of property is somewhat unique, but they all fall into a standard pattern. And then once we've done that and we've taken in any last comments, the Committee of Adjustment members have the right to ask questions. And when we're done asking questions, we'll move a motion either to approve or to provide consent or to not provide consent.
Okay, thank you.
After that, to answer your other question, though, and maybe I should turn this to the planners, this isn't the final stage of this. This simply deals with the severance of the land, and there are other opportunities for her to engage with various planning staff on items such as perhaps site plan or something. Perhaps you could educate us on that.
Through the chair, it's actually my understanding that we have an additional planning staff member who's online who can speak to this application specifically.
Fine, thank you. Over to him.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, there would be other opportunities to, at the time of building permit submission, that's when this would get reviewed in its entirety. As part of the submission materials that were submitted by the applicant, they did provide a building envelope which did conform with the zoning bylaw provisions. So based on that concept, it would comply. However, there will be future review at the time of building permit submission.
How would I be notified of any future permits? I mean, if I had questions at that time or concerns.
Through to our planning expert, please.
So through the chair, they're assuming the applications for building permits complied with building code and complied with zoning, there would be no circulation to the public. If in the event the materials that were submitted didn't comply with zoning, and they were not willing to revise those to comply with zoning, they would have the ability to apply for a minor variance, which would become public process, and Ms. Walker would be notified through that process as well.
To propose a further question, mostly for the edification of the neighbor. So provided they live by the rules that exist, once the severance is done, her opportunity for any specific alterations to minimize the impact on her property are non-existent. Is that what you're telling us?
That would be correct.
So let me ask a further question. Has any consideration been given to changing the direction of the building envelope, which would protect the eastern edge of the severed property, all right, and allow her some distance that would protect her property? I mean, if it's the same building envelope, just turn one way or the other, what's the concern?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the official plan, and in the staff report, it goes into this in further detail, but the official plan would not allow for additional access from from Sunnydale Road South. So as noted in the Public Works comments, the access would have to be obtained from Knox Road East, maintaining a minimum 9 meters from the intersection of street line there. And that's based on the official plan policy review.
Thank you. Thank you for the information. I know you're not liking the answer to the neighbor, but I'm afraid that is the situation that as the rules permit at this point. Okay. Are there any questions from any members of the committee? And then I'm looking for someone to move and someone to second it. Move or anything, move it or deny it. So moved. Second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Good. Motion to consent is granted. Application 2, A0623, 502 River Road East. Over to the planners. We good?
Sorry, just one moment.
The gentleman that just walked up, are you the applicant or are you someone that wishes to comment on it? I am the... Okay, thank you. I knew I left an option out.
Okay, thank you for waiting. So for file A0623 at 502 River Road East, the application requests relief from section 3.23.6, non-complying lots, buildings, and structures of Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2003-60 as amended. Specifically, the applicant requests relief from section 3.23.6 II to recognize the location of the existing non-complying dwelling.
Excuse me for a moment. They can't, you need to speak up for those in the audience as well.
Oh.
They're not hooked up to our mics.
Okay, sorry. I can talk louder. To recognize the location of the existing non-complying dwelling, which encroaches into the 16.5% of the required 6-meter front yard setback and 38% of the required 1.8-meter interior side yard setback, whereas the encroachment of the dwelling into any required yards of the zone shall not exceed 15% in each separate yard. The variances requested would permit the construction of a new 140.3 square meter addition to the second floor of an existing non-complying single detached dwelling. In terms of comments, we've received comments from Public Works that have noted no objection to the application. In consideration of the foregoing, the Planning Department supports application A0623, subject to the following conditions being applied: that the development will be substantially consistent with the site plan and building design drawings provided with this minor variance application submission at the time of the building permit application review. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments from anyone in the audience? Is there anything the agent would like to add? I think it's been pretty well covered. All right, your recommendation is to agree? Right? Yes? Absolutely, I was getting there.
Sorry.
Over to you.
On this particular application, the original existing foundation doesn't conform to what the requirements were, and so I guess it's been grandfathered. Now, there's a second floor going up now, under construction?
There's a partial second floor. You originally had a second floor deck on top of a flat roof,
Okay.
And what he was doing was, he was doing some major renovations to that home. It's leaking, you know, flat roofs usually leak. So he decided to enclose this deck up above. But it's still being on the same footprint of what originally is there, which is non-conforming. So really to enclose, put in anything with a roof on it, we have to, well, if we're adding to a non-complying structure to begin with, we have to, you know, be granted that before we can add any kind of addition, even if the addition part is going to be.
So the work going on now is a repair to the original structure, but however, if this does get approved, the plan is to go ahead with a second floor above the existing footprint?
What originally happened in a nutshell is he was going through these renovations and he built this structure on top of this existing roof, the main floor roof. When he was going through the inspection processes, the building inspector said, "Do you have drawings for these?" Because it wasn't on his original renovation permit. So having said that, my client, Mr. McCall, he called me up and he says, "Ronnie, I need some drawings." And I said, "Well, okay, first I need a site plan, okay, to make sure everything conforms." Then I noticed, well, the original structure does not conform, and that's why I'm here today.
So is he doing this renovation without a building permit?
He has a partial permit for the renovation stuff itself, but not for the new ad that he built up on top of this deck.
So when he got the renovation permit from the town, did they know that it didn't meet or it required this extra step?
Sir, the renovation, no, he did not realize he needed a permit to do this extra step.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm more confused than I was a minute ago. Over to the planning staff. So a partial new structure is being built over something that previously did not comply. And I understand non-compliance may be grandfathered, et cetera. But that's larger than, I understand renovations don't usually require building permits, but does this not require a building permit?
Through the chair, thank you for your question. It's my understanding that this addition does in fact require a building permit, and that's why the applicant is seeking relief through this specific provision to recognize the existing non-complying encroachment of the building to then permit this second-story addition. And this would essentially, as the agent has mentioned, this would retroactively address what is there now.
So the clarification for the audience and the members of the committee that may be as thick-headed as I am on occasion, what we're looking at is the approval of the encroachment, and following that, there would be a building permit application made that has nothing to do with this particular process at the moment, correct?
Pardon me, through the chair, I don't know that I fully understand the intent of the question, but in this instance, again, the variance is simply recognizing the existing non-complying encroachment of the footprint of the existing structure, the original dwelling. In granting this variance, that would then allow the approval of a building permit for the second floor renovation, or in this case, the addition.
Right, I said it poorly, you said it brilliantly, so it's a variance first, permit second, right? Okay.
Through the chair, that's correct. Thank you.
Thank you. You have nothing further, correct? You are just answering a question? Are there any other questions from the members of the committee? Seeing none? I'm sorry, I've lost my, moved and seconded this, correct? Or not? All right, I'm looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved, seconded. Any further questions? All in favor? Pass. Okay. Application 3 on today's agenda, B1423 Wildwood Drive. Over to planning.
Application B14, located at plan, or legally described as Plan 1699, Lot 41. The application proposes to create one new lot for a total of 2 lots. The portion of the property to be severed is shown on the sketch provided, Part 1, has a frontage of approximately 30 meters along Wildwood Drive, a depth of approximately 53 meters, and an area of approximately 1,560 square meters. The portion of the property proposed to be retained, as shown on the severance sketch provided, Part 2, has a frontage of approximately 28 meters, a depth of approximately 53 meters, and an area of approximately 1,490 square meters. Comments received. Public Works does not oppose the applicant's request. Public Works does not propose any conditions. The property is not regulated by the MVCA, and Wasaga Distribution has noted that as there is currently no electrical service to either lot, the applicant must contact WDI for the requirements of providing new services to the lots in question. Sure. I think that Cam's just going to read out a comment from the public that we recently received. Okay, if the member of the public is available to speak, we can pass that.
Are we completed, have we completed all the staff comments and department comments? Please join us.
Yes, on. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Mary Ann Stumpf, and I live at 260 Wildwood Drive, and I would like to address 3 items related to this proposal, and I will be brief. So, item 1, I raise no objections to this application. None at all. Dead easy. Okay, item 2 is actually for the property owner. So through the property owner's representative, Mr. Pascuso, I would like to ask Milda Marcis for permission to enter the property and to effectively rescue the native plants in those areas that will be heavily disturbed by house construction. The rest of the lot would remain undisturbed by the removal team. I have made the proposal and provided additional information about how this would work, and that everything would be at the discretion and approval of the owner. So I have provided that information for the consideration of the owner. Item 3 is actually for council through you. I recognize for council that the council is fully occupied with rather weighty items, often quite urgent ones and very expensive, and this is going to seem like a very trivial request. Nevertheless, it's not unimportant. And maybe more to the point, it requires no time, no effort, and no money on the part of council or on the part of Wasaga Beach staff. So it's also consistent with Bylaw 21907, which was enacted by former Mayor Byfolchi, and the policy is called for the protection and enhancement of the tree canopy and natural vegetation in the municipality. Okay, with that preamble, here's my request. I ask council to consider this rescue operation as a pilot project for consideration as a recommended practice for future builds. That's recommended, not obligatory. If council agrees to view the project in this way, I undertake to report back on how the work was done, the results of the work, and also feedback from the landowner. So, in summary, this is about encouraging landowners to voluntarily save native plants that would otherwise be destroyed during construction. I recognize you can't make an omelet without breaking eggs. Plants and things will be destroyed, but we can harvest them. Wasaga Beach is proud of its natural heritage, but as we work towards increasing the builds in the Wasaga Beach municipality, that natural heritage is going to shrink and shrink and shrink. If council endorses this, or at least considers endorsing it, that sets a huge example for future builds. especially when it comes to developers of large areas where acres of plants will be destroyed. And that, gentlemen, thank you, is my submission.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I need to clarify something just
Yes.
for your edification. I think what you're doing is honorable and noble, and I support it 100%, but I'm a person of absolutely no importance in this community in terms of those types of decision-making. Neither is this committee a conduit directly to council. So we have no way to directly reference what you're suggesting to council. I would suggest that you talk to the city clerk and you request to make a presentation or a deputation to council about this, or to whatever committee they may choose to refer it to. I think there's great potential to what you're suggesting, and I applaud. I hope the owner is willing to allow you onto the property to harvest what you can and salvage that. Although once again, we have no power to force the owner to allow that, and I know you recognize that. So I'm just suggesting that as we move forward with this, it's a wonderful idea for the good of the community. I would suggest you direct through the clerk and make a presentation directly to City Council. We have no way of doing that here.
So I've actually put our submission into, to go through to council, I understand there's a package that comes from this committee that goes to council, or if I misunderstood?
Go ahead.
And through you, the chair, I believe that what would go to council would be the minutes from the meeting. I'm not sure the process for your letter specifically, but I do agree with our chair here. I think to get your information directly to council, you may wish to go through a deputation process with the clerk's department.
Allow me to simplify this for you. What happens is the minutes are usually very brief. They cover basically what was presented and what the final decision was. All right, and there may be some direction that's specific to us, but this isn't a direction that this committee has the power to do.
Okay.
So while I do appreciate you putting it forward to them, and it may very well be appended to a lengthy document, if
Which
you
may
wanted
not
more
get
direct action, if you go through the clerk and ask for either a deputation or a presentation, they have the power to get that in front of council. Or for that matter, if you don't get the result you want there, and I can't imagine why you wouldn't, I'm not suggesting you wouldn't, but I'm sure that amongst the elected representatives, someone would be more than happy to speak with you about that opportunity.
Okay, brilliant.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
through the chair, planning staff thanks the chair for this particular recommendation. We can also assist the applicant in ensuring that she has the correct contact information to get in touch with the town's clerk's department to bring forth this deputation.
Perfect. Now you've got an assistant on staff already, so it's perfect. Thank you. Further? Okay, moved. Seconded. What?
I don't believe that the recommendation was read out yet, so I might just need to do that quickly, because I think we went from the comments to this, sorry. So in terms of the recommendation, in consideration of the foregoing, based on the above, the Planning Department supports application B1423, subject to the following conditions being applied. One, that 5% parkland contribution as required by the Planning Act be paid as a requirement of the approval of the severance. The parcel severed, the determination of the parkland contribution will be based upon an appraisal prepared by an individual who is a member of the, Appraisal Institute of Canada, that the applicant, sorry, one second.
While you're doing that, I'm sorry, did I miss you somehow?
Mr. Chair, I am the agent on behalf of the applicant, and I just wanted to take 10 seconds.
Sure, do it now while we're doing this. That's fine.
So my name is
Press the button so.
my name's Andrew Pascuzzo. I'm a registered professional planner here on behalf of the applicant, the owner of the property. We're proposing an infill lot on full services, which in my opinion represents good planning. I've read through the staff report, which recommends approval, as we all know now. There's 4 conditions. They're all the standard ones. We have no concerns with any of the conditions. I'm not aware of any objections. I've spoken with Mary Ann, and we're going to be providing the applicant, the owner's email and phone contact information so they can correspond. And that's, I'm here today requesting that you approve the consent And that's all I have, but I'm here to answer any questions, which it doesn't sound like there is. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, and I apologize. My vision was directed over there, and I wasn't aware you were at the mic before that happened. My apologies. And back to you.
To continue, so I believe I got through the first
Yes, you did.
condition there. So number 2, the applicant provides a registered reference plan, said reference plan to show all of the parcels to be severed and all of the parcel to be retained. 3, that the applicant provide a draft legal description of the severed lands to be included in the certificate of official. And 4, that all conditions of this decision be fulfilled in the documents presented to the planning department for issuance of the certificate of official within a period not to exceed 24 months from the date of decision. Thank you.
Thank you. We're back to voting. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Nope. It's carried. Application number 4, A0723, Lot 55, Plan 1700. May I ask a procedural question of the planner? Although you may not be happy that I'm asking it since you're not really a clerk. Is it our intention to, like, there's 4 of these, applications 4, 5, 6, and 7, that are just different lots on the exact same plan? It's a series of severances, correct?
Through you, the chair. So for, I believe it's A07 to A10, A07 and A10 are on the same
Right.
lot that we recently had a consent application go through for. So those 2 are on the same report. However, the recommendations are separate, so they would be voted on separately if that's the
Okay.
question. Okay.
All right, fine. I was just trying to find a way of shortening, if we're doing the same standard requirements, I just thought we might skip some of the reading, but as you wish, it's all good. So, application number 4, all right, A0723, over to the planner to explain it.
So A0723 and A1023, Plan 1700, Lot 55, proposed parts 15 and 16, subject to consent application B0623. The proposed severed lands provided as Part 15, resulting from consent application B0623, will have a frontage of approximately 14.8 meters along Joanne Crescent, a depth of approximately 30.22 meters, and an area of approximately 427.8 square meters. The proposed retained lands provided as Part 16, resulting from consent application B0623, will have a frontage of approximately 14.8 meters along Joanne Crescent and a depth of approximately 30.22 meters and an area of approximately 434.4 square meters. The applications request relief from Section 4 Residential Type 1 R1 zone from Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2003-60 as amended. In minor variance application A0723, the applicant requests relief from Section 4.3.1A to permit a minimum lot area of 434.4 square meters for the proposed retained lands, Part 16 of consent application B0623, whereas a lot area of 464.5 square meters is required. In minor variance application A1023, the applicant requests relief from Section 4.3.1A to permit a minimum lot area of 427.8 square meters for the proposed severed lands, Part 15 of consent application B0623, whereas a lot area of 464.5 square meters is required. The lands legally described as Reg Comp Plan 1700, Lot 55 were recently subject to consent applications B0523 and B0623 to sever the lands into 3 separate lots, being parts 15 and 16, and the adjacent lot parts 13 and 14. However, the requested minor variances are only required as a result of consent application B0623. The requested variances would allow for the creation of parts 15 and 16 of consent application B0623 with lot areas smaller than 464.5 square meters. The properties subject to these applications for minor variance are subject to applications for consent under files B0523 and B0623. However, as mentioned above, the requested minor variances are required as a result of consent application B0623. In consideration of the foregoing, the Planning Department supports application A0723 subject to the following conditions being applied. 1, that the lot creation be substantially consistent with the site plan drawing provided with the application contained within Appendix 1 of this report, and 2, that minor variance application A1023 is approved. In consideration of the foregoing, the Planning Department also supports application A1023, subject to the following conditions being applied: that the lot creation will be substantially consistent with the site plan/drawing provided with the application contained within Appendix 1 of this report, and that, in number 2, that minor variance application A0723 is approved. Planning staff have received comments from the Public Works Department noting that the residential-sized municipal water and sanitary sewer services are currently available and that Public Works does not oppose the applicant's requests. Comments were also received from the MVCA, which noted that the MVCA has reviewed the proposed minor variance applications, and based upon their mandate and policies under the Conservation Authorities Act, and given the comments above, the MVCA has no objections to the approval of the applications, and those are all the comments received. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments from anyone in attendance? Okay, are you the property owner? No? Yeah. Okay, thank you. So, any questions from members of the committee? Looking for a mover and a seconder. So moved, so seconded. Anything further, all in favor? Passed or granted. And on to, where am I? Application 5, A1023, Lot 55, Plan 1700. It's basically the other side.
So that would, I believe when I spoke there, that probably covered the both of them, but I can read out the recommendation for that one specifically for A1023.
Perfect.
So, in consideration of the foregoing, the Planning Department supports application A1023, subject to the following conditions being applied. 1, that the lot creation will be substantially consistent with the site plan/drawings provided with the application contained within Appendix 1 of this report. And 2, that minor variance application A0723 is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? I need a mover. I need a seconder. And a vote. Want my chair? I want my job? Approved. Application number 6, A0823, Lot 58, Plan 1700.
Application A0823 and A0923 located at, or legally described as Plan 1700 Lot 58, proposed parts 11 and 12, subject to consent application B0823. The proposed severed lands provided as Part 11 resulting from consent application B0823 will have a frontage of approximately 14.33 meters along Joanne Crescent, a depth of approximately 30.91 meters, and an area of approximately 432.1 square meters. The proposed retained lands provided as Part 12 resulting from consent application B0823 will have a frontage of approximately 14.33 meters along Joanne Crescent, a depth of approximately 30.91 meters, and an area of approximately 444.5 square meters. The applications, in minor variance application A0823, the applicant requests relief from section 4.3.1A to permit a minimum lot area of 444.5 square meters for the proposed retained lands, Part 12 of consent application B0823, whereas a lot area of 464.5 square meters is required. In minor variance application A0923, the applicant requests relief from section 4.3.1A to permit a minimum lot area of 432.1 square meters for the proposed severed lands, Part 11 of consent application B0823, whereas a lot area of 464.5 square meters is required. Planning staff's recommendation. In consideration of the foregoing, the Planning Department supports application A0823, subject to the following conditions being applied. One, that the lot creation will be substantially consistent with the site plan/drawings provided with the application contained within Appendix 1 of this report, and two, that minor variance application A0923 is approved. In consideration of the foregoing, the Planning Department also supports application A0923, subject to the following conditions being applied. One, that the lot creation be substantially consistent with the site plan/drawings provided with the application contained within Appendix 1 of this report, and two, that minor variance application A0823 is approved. Planning staff have received comments from the Public Works Department noting that residential-sized municipal water and sanitary services are currently available, and that Public Works does not oppose the applicant's requests. Comments were also received by the NVCA, which note that the MVCA has reviewed the proposed minor variance applications, and based upon their mandate and policies under the Conservation Authorities Act, given the comments above, the MVCA has no objections to the approval of the applications, and that's all comments received.
Thank you. Just a clarification for my sake, do you want two motions or one motion? It was presented together, so will one motion suffice?
I think we should stick to the two motions if possible.
Fine.
Thank you.
Yes, that's fine. That's why I asked the question. So, dealing with 08 first. Moving it. Second. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Approved. And now 09. Moved, seconded. Any questions? Seeing none, voting, all in favor, approved. Okay. So now we're down to application 8. Am I correct? Yes, and this is our final one of the day, unless there's something added I don't know about, which wouldn't surprise me the way the day has gone. Application 8, A1123, 1004 Mosley Street. And I'll turn it over to the planning to outline it for us.
Thank you. File A1123, located at 100 Mosley Street, 1004 Mosley Street. The subject lands have a frontage of approximately 30.48 meters along Mosley Street, a depth of approximately 30.48 meters, and an area of approximately 650 square meters. The application requests the following relief from Section 14 Tourist Commercial CT Zone of Zoning Bylaw 2003-60 as amended, specifically Section 14.3.5, to permit an interior side yard setback width of 1 meter along the southwest interior property line of the proposed detached accessory structure, whereas a minimum of 6 meters is required where a property abuts a residential zone. Section 14.3.6 to permit a rear yard depth of 3.04 meters for the proposed detached accessory structure, whereas a minimum of 6 meters is required where a property abuts a residential zone. The application requests further relief from Section 3.6, distance between buildings and structures of zoning bylaw 2003-60 as amended, specifically Section 3.6.1 to permit a separation distance of 1.15 meters between the new proposed detached structure and the existing primary building on the property, whereas no detached structure shall be located closer than 1.2 meters to any other building or structure. Planning staff have received comments from the Public Works Department noting that they have no objection to the application. Sorry. Sorry, I believe that we also have a written comment here from a resident. So from Marco Pecca and Franca D'Angelo. They note that my husband and I received notice by mail for an application for 1004 Mosley Street, Town of Wasaga Beach, County of Simcoe. The variance requested would facilitate the placement of a detached accessory structure, a commercial refrigeration unit in the rear yard of the property. We live at 77 22nd Street North in Wasaga Beach. The rear yard of the property in question is up against the rear yard of our property. We are firmly opposed to granting the variance. We do not want a commercial refrigeration unit to be installed. The constant humming sound emulating from the compressors is noise pollution. We live in a beach setting, and it is important we maintain the natural beauty of the surroundings. Please do not hesitate to contact us for further comment. The variance for a refrigeration unit should be granted, or should not be granted, sorry. And in terms of the recommendation, in consideration of the foregoing, the Planning Department supports application file A1123, subject to the following conditions being applied. One, that the development will be substantially consistent with the site plan and building design drawings provided within this minor variance application submission at the time of the building permit application review. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the applicant or his agent, their agent here? Would you like to give us an explanation or pass some comments on this?
Don't have any comments, but I can speak.
What I'm really referring to is the extent of the noise generated by, I mean, we have a neighbor complaining about the potential sound. The emanation from a refrigeration unit going 24/7 could certainly affect the enjoyment of their residential property, so perhaps you'd like to comment on that, was my point.
In working with the planners, we had the discussions about this, and we had submitted all the decibel ratings. It's no different than an a home air conditioner unit on the side or back of your house. It doesn't stay on 24 hours a day. It only comes on and off when needed. And the decibel rating was lower than many things that you hear out there, like car horns and whatnot. So,
Thank you. That clarification is of assistance. Are there any other comments or questions from anyone in the audience? Come on up. Or not. Name and address for the records, please.
Sylvia Bray, representing 1014 Mosley, which is an adjacent property. In speaking with the neighbors, there are real concerns about the noise of this.
May I hold up for a second? I need to know the rules. Do we allow the filming of speakers by private citizens? I just don't know the answer to the question. I'm not being difficult. Do we do that?
Through the chair, in this instance, the recording, obviously the session is being recorded
Okay,
by
fine.
municipal staff, so
Thank you.
our preference would be that citizens in the audience do not record the session personally.
Thank you. Sorry, please continue.
Thank you, Chair. So I know in the report there was a list of the decibels being 70 dBA. A quick Google search tells you that at that level it's disturbing and annoying on an ongoing basis. So I'm not sure if anything can be added to this application or to this exemption that would maybe make for studies afterwards, because what we find with most manufacturers' equipment is they might give you a range where that equipment should run, but when you go through with a test meter afterwards, it's not actually running within that range. So yes, maybe at 70 decibels, it's the equivalent to a dishwasher, or there was something else, maybe a washing machine. But this one's coming off and on, and quite often, I mean, my new dishwasher is very quiet, my old one rocked the house. So I think it's hard for us to make a determination as to what impact that noise will have. But the exemption is fairly significant. The requirements are 6 meters. They're asking for 1 on one of the fences, and the other is 6 meters, and they're asking for 3. So there's significant exemptions to those residents who back onto. And I know when council was having the arena library built, the neighbors were very concerned about the noise of a parking lot for an arena library. And at that point, the town was studying noise abatement fences, sound panels. So there's different things that could lessen the impact on the neighbors. And I'm not sure, once the consent is granted, the neighbors have no recourse. So my concern in not speaking up is, could there be something in that list of requirements that says there should be a sound study, there should be, because it truly might have a greater impact than the manufacturer's recommendations are telling us.
Thank you. Let me ask a slightly different question through to the planners. First of all, is the planner that actually made the recommendation with us? All right, good. No, and I don't mean anything by that, except that it's difficult to defend something if you're not here or if you're the one that's left with it, right? So, was there evidence produced in the consideration of this report about the level of sound and any sound abatement that might be required when you were considering this file?
So through the chair, thank you for your question. And I think I should say from the outset, as part of the assessment criteria that we would typically go through when looking at minor variances, noise impact isn't something that's necessarily captured through our zoning provisions. It's not a provision in the zoning bylaw. So staff, as a courtesy to the adjacent residents and those impacted by the application, had asked that the applicant provide supplementary information that outlined the sound decibel rating of this particular device. And the purpose of obtaining that additional information was for the benefit of committee, should there be further deliberation or the decision to ask for additional conditions of approval.
So, given what you just said in terms of nothing in the zoning act that provides for the consideration of noise, does the Committee of Adjustment even have the right to impose the condition that was just requested of us? I'm not suggesting we're going to do it. I'm just asking if we even have the power to do so.
Thank you, and through the chair, I appreciate that question. I think in this particular case, of the 4 tests under the Planning Act, one piece of criteria that planning staff assess for minor variances is impact. And in this case, I think the noise is most applicable to that particular assessment criteria. So it gets difficult in that although there aren't necessarily provisions in the zoning bylaw that capture noise, it is part of the assessment criteria when looking at these applications, as impact is a part of the assessment criteria.
So but here's the next logical question is, if we were to put on such a condition, how do we enforce a retroactive flagrant violation of that?
Through the chair, and I appreciate that question. There again, I think the committee would have to determine what is most appropriate in this instance for the purpose of mitigating noise. So again, for the benefit of the committee, I had outlined information with regards to the sound decibel rating, but this isn't something that's outlined in the zoning bylaw.
It's okay to say you don't know.
Well, we use our best judgment as staff in this instance, and again, it's not a standard assessment criteria outlined in our zoning bylaw. So again, for the benefit of the committee, I had included information with regards to the sound decibel rating.
Appreciate it. Yes.
So it's a very valid point brought up in some things, and as indicated, sometimes you get a noisy dishwasher, sometimes you don't. And I think with a business, and and I think where the situation is, we've got a residential close to a commercial business, and the business wants to run their business and do what they want to do in that, and I understand that. And I went to the site yesterday to see it, and right away, it's okay, it's an ice cream place and all the rest of it. But I really do, what I would like to see, and I don't know how we could do this, but I think if there's a problem down the road, whether there should be a sound barrier or there should be something. But what I don't want to hear down the road is 2 or 3 years from now, right? Somebody says, hey, I went into the meeting and I asked for their concern for this or this, some sort of recommendation. And I phoned bylaw 6 times, the bylaw goes down and says it meets the criteria of the noise bylaw. And I'd much rather if there was something, and I'm not sure we can do it today without putting this off, but I would rather have a recommendation in by the planning staff to say, given this, there should be a sound barrier or something in there or something along that effect.
If you can help, sure.
If I may, a couple things. One, the planning is to put it on the ground on the east side with a boxed-in situation, so taking into the account the respect for the neighbors. As for the variance in terms of depth and length, some of the very neighbors have their structures attached to our very fence, so they weren't concerned about it when they were building their things, but they are when I am mine. I also want to point out that the esteemed community builder that spoke is my neighbor and competitor who, probably has a sort of, if I could say, pecuniary interest here to go against me and not to have this cooler put in an area that's zoned commercial and tourism. So again, we've taken all measures to make sure that it's as quiet as possible, but the ratings for the item are below the normal ratings for anything that we just talked about, so.
Yes?
Through the chair, maybe you could just clarify for me, is this a walk-in refrigerator
Correct.
or is it a?
It's a walk-in.
It's a walk-in, okay, thank you.
Does that help?
Yes, because I thought if it was a refrigeration unit, it could be removed and put on the roof, a rooftop, but since
okay.
it's walk-in, yeah,
No,
thank you.
Thank you. I wasn't sure where you were going with that, and it helps me to know that as well. Thank you.
Yep.
I think there's a real consideration here with regards to the noise and ensuring that the noise isn't going to go above 70 decibels. I'd suggest that we defer this so that the applicant can come back and, I guess, guarantee that when the installation is done, if it exceeds 70 decibels, that you'll put some mitigation measures in effect to make sure that the neighbors aren't objecting to the excess noise that might occur.
Well, with respect to what the manufacturer has provided us with the information of the level, as well as on top of it putting into the sounded barrier box, I mean, other than guaranteeing anything, but it's what the actual unit is rated for. Again, no different than an air conditioner. We'd be having this conversation if it was the air conditioner for my place.
If that's the case and you're confident in their recommendations, I don't see why you'd have an objection to guaranteeing that. If that's what the manufacturer guarantees, then they should back it up. And I understand the objections of the neighbors. I wouldn't want something that's guaranteed at a certain decibel level and it doesn't come through afterwards, that we can't do anything about it.
So are you recommending that I heard the deferral, but would you recommending that we perhaps add a provision to it that indicates that should it go beyond the 70 decibels, that a sound barrier fencing be required at that time or something like that?
Yeah, I'm suggesting some kind of mitigation to bring the sound levels down to what's been promised, essentially, whatever that is, and is approved by the town to be able to do that.
So we have two choices here. We have three choices. We can thank everyone and approve it, thank everyone and deny it. We can defer it, I guess, is a fourth choice, or we can create provisions that were unclear of the specific. I think if we're going to pass anything today that has provisions with regard to the noise abatement, we need to be precise, because everyone involved needs to know what's going on. All right, we can't send it back to staff saying, what's your best thought? All right, so if we're going to do that, you have something to say? Sure.
Through the chair, you talked about boxing it in. Maybe we could put a condition in that you build a box around the unit, whatever insulation, in order to get this thing moving forward. And we would put that in as a condition to the existing conditions that are there.
Well, that is the plan. That is the plan.
Then maybe you could supply a diagram or something of specifications of what you're going to do, whether it's a 2x4 wall all the way around it enclosed with insulation of some sort to help keep the decibels down.
I really think much ado about nothing here in terms of where it's going to be in terms of the sound, as well as the location from where the speakers are, won't even hear it,
With respect,
with respect.
neighbors' concerns are never irrelevant.
No, okay.
Through the chair, that's my suggestion, how we could move this forward, add it as a condition to whatever the planners already have.
Through the chair.
You wish to speak? Right ahead.
Pardon me, and through the chair, I think it's important to keep in mind that these would be conditions of approval, and I think if we were outlining assessment criteria, that would be over a prolonged duration. So say it's assessing this for refrigeration unit for multiple months or years, we would, the committee would need to be mindful of that in terms of how that condition would be drafted. Because again, the approval is contingent on the conditions, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I understand Dan's suggestion with a box. I think the concern with the box, it could be a box of 2x4s and it does nothing for sound mitigation. So I think if there was to be some kind of amendment in that respect, that there would have to be something to do with what kind of sound mitigation there is to it. I would suggest, I think it's better for the applicant to come back with something that would address the issue, specifically with the sound that's coming from the unit. If it addresses the issue that'll keep the sound below 70 decibels, we really don't care how you do that. I don't know if that requires a deferral. I don't know if this committee is able to put amendments into place here or not. We don't have the knowledge, obviously, I don't think, to do that. So I would suggest a deferral to give the applicant an opportunity to clarify or to more precisely define what kind of noise will come out of the facility would probably address the issue.
Well, we've already defined that. That's what the manufacturer says. I could understand if we're talking about something that was defined as over 90, 100, and then you're asking me to bring it down. It's defined as a normal level with the extra box we're putting on top of it. We should be well underneath it. We've already taken all of that into account.
Sorry, go ahead.
Through the chair, this is the second or third time you've mentioned a box. Can you detail what you're referring to as a box? Are you talking about an insulation?
An insulated box.
When I suggested a 2x4, that's just the framing part of it. I'm talking about insulation inside of it or on the outside, whatever. You've mentioned 3 times about a box. Can you indicate what the material will be made out of?
It's an insulated box built with the sound insulation as the barrier over and surrounding the compressor.
Through the chair, then, are we not getting this resolved here if he's going to do this?
It seems to me that if there's sound insulation already taking place within the box, we seem to be getting pretty close to where we want it to be, aren't we?
I guess we are if the sound mitigation will keep the sound below 70 decibels. If that's what's understood, that's what will happen, and it will happen, then I don't have an issue. But I guess the question is whether the manufacturer is being truthful, and they tend to push the limit as far as my experience has been. They say it's a certain level and it's above another. So I would suggest that there has to be something in there that says the manufacturer's guarantee will be adhered to, or something to that effect.
Go ahead.
Through the chair, this box that you keep referring to, is this something that comes from the manufacturer, or is this something that you're going to do in addition?
We're going to do in addition to theirs. Yeah.
Then I think we're getting there.
And with your permission, is it possible, and I know it's not your department, okay, but is it possible for the neighbor a year from now, take a time, complaining about the noise, to call City Hall and ask someone to go out and do a decibel check on it, and if it's over 70, for something?
Through the chair, in this instance, the town does have a noise bylaw that's enforced through the Municipal Bylaw Enforcement Division of the town. In this particular case, there's criteria that speaks to requirements around noise outputs. As you've alluded to, I don't work in that department. We don't work with that bylaw on a consistent basis, but we can certainly gather additional information if you need that to make your decision.
Okay, thank you. At this point, folks, I'm looking for a motion to do so. Okay, yep.
Through the chair, are you willing to provide specifications for this box?
I can.
And then I think that would be a good thing. Whatever you're going to build it with, to provide either a small drawing or whatever products you're going to use for sound barrier. Thank you.
But he doesn't have it in his back pocket, so are you suggesting a deferral to next month, or are you suggesting we approve it in anticipation of that information?
Through the chair, I think we could approve it and just add it as a condition. That's all, a simple condition. And that way everything gets to move forward. This isn't rocket science here. It's a small little diagram he has to do. We can get this thing moving for everybody involved and help protect the neighbors' concerns as well. Thank you.
Can I help?
Pardon me, through the chair, one mechanism that may assist in this situation would be to have one of the municipal bylaw officers, in this case, or inspectors, go out to the property to ensure that the noise output of this refrigeration unit is in fact matching the manufacturer's decibel level as outlined in the manufacturer's information submission.
So, as a condition?
As a condition, to be clear.
All right, so at this point, I think what I'm looking for is a motion that basically does the approval but has two conditions to it. One is the inspection by the municipal bylaw enforcement and includes the specifications for the building and the materials used. Does that make sense? Can you turn that into the language you need for a motion, or do you need me to do that?
Through the chair, we can certainly do our best to assist with the language, but we would also, we would appreciate some language coming from the members.
I got it. Approved based on the following conditions. One, like in addition to the regular conditions you've put on it, so whatever number this would be, that's drawings and specifications of the enclosure structure, including materials used, and insulation be provided. And next to numbered point, I would say 2, but I'm not sure where we are in the list. That an inspection by municipal bylaw enforcement officers to ensure the adherence to the manufacturer's recommended decibel levels. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Chair, and perhaps staff will read those conditions out loud.
Okay, fine.
Before the vote.
Okay, because I think we're about to have the vote. Are there any other questions at this point? Are we happy with this now? You're okay?
Thank you.
Yes?
If I could just make a comment. Thank you for considering the neighbors. The fear is if this consent was granted today, there were no conditions, and then the neighborhood has no recourse. So thank you for recognizing and listening that there were concerns and addressing them.
Absolutely, that's why we exist. Thank you. I get bored easily.
Pardon me just a moment. I appreciate your patience.
Folks, a lot of dead airspace out there.
Through the chair, thank you for your patience. So staff have done their best to replicate the conditions that you've just outlined. So condition one reads that the drawing/specifications of the enclosure, including materials and insulation, be provided to the Planning and Building Department for review.
Fine.
Condition 2, that an inspection be conducted by municipal bylaw officers to ensure compliance with the manufacturer's decibel level after the installation of the refrigeration unit.
Fine. That meet everyone's desires? Looking for a mover? I see a mover, I see a seconder. All in favor? Passed. Thanks to everybody in the audience. I think we finally came to a resolution that satisfies most people. And our next meeting is June 21st, 2023. Is there anything of further importance to the committee? Meeting, do we need a motion to adjourn, or do we just adjourn? We need a motion. I need a motion to adjourn. Done. Seconded. All in favor? We adjourn. Bye.
Recording stopped.